September 6, 1976. 30,000 feet above the Sea of Japan. Lieutenant Viktor Belenko checks his fuel gauge one last time. His hands are steady. His breathing is not. For months, he has memorized every radar blind spot between Siberia and Japan, every patrol schedule, every window in the Soviet air defense net. Today, he uses all of it. He banks hard left, away from his squadron, away from the Soviet Union, away from everything. In the cockpit of the most secret fighter jet ever built by the Kremlin, a Soviet pilot vanishes into the clouds. The Soviets thought he was dead. The Americans realized their greatest nightmare had just landed on their doorstep. To understand what Viktor Belenko took with him that day, you have to understand what the MiG-25 meant to the Western world. The year is 1964. American spy satellites capture the first images of a new Soviet aircraft. Long, massive, twin engines, enormous air intakes. The Pentagon calls it the Foxbat, and they are terrified. The numbers coming out of Moscow are almost impossible to believe. Mach 3.2 top speed, service ceiling of 80,000 feet, a radar so powerful it could track multiple targets simultaneously. For context, the fastest American fighter at the time could barely reach Mach 2. The Foxbat was in a different category entirely. The entire NATO air fleet was suddenly obsolete. The U.S. Air Force entered emergency mode. Congress authorized billions for a new aircraft that could match the Foxbat. The result was the F-15 Eagle, America's most expensive fighter jet ever built. Designed entirely around one assumption, that the MiG-25 was as good as the Soviets claimed. But here is what no one in Washington knew. The Foxbat was a ghost, impressive from a distance, empty up close. The Soviet military knew it. The pilots who flew it knew it. Viktor Belenko knew it better than anyone. He had spent years in the cockpit of that machine. He knew its real speed limit, its real range, its real limitations. And he knew something else. Something that kept him awake at night in his freezing barracks at Chuguyevka Air Base. The greatest weapon the Kremlin possessed was not the MiG-25. It was the West's fear of it. Viktor Belenko was born in 1947 in a small city in the Soviet South. He was everything the Soviet system wanted a young man to be: disciplined, ambitious, talented. He graduated top of his class from the Armavir Military Aviation School, was assigned to the elite 513th Fighter Regiment, given the keys to the Kremlin's most prized aircraft. He should have been proud. He was not. Chuguyevka Air Base sat near Vladivostok in the Soviet Far East. Cold, remote, forgotten. The barracks were cramped and poorly heated. Equipment broke down and was rarely replaced. The maintenance crews, underpaid, underfed, and deeply demoralized, had developed a creative solution to the vodka shortage. They drank the MiG-25's coolant fluid, alcohol-based brake fluid, drained directly from the aircraft. Belenko tried to fix things. He submitted proposals, raised concerns, pushed for improvements. The political officers shut him down every time. Ideological conformity over operational competence. Every single time. At home, things were no better. His wife Lyudmila had told him she intended to file for divorce. She wanted out of the isolated Soviet military life. So did he. Belenko began spending his nights studying something that was not in any Soviet training manual. Maps of the Sea of Japan. Japanese radar coverage patterns. The location of every airfield within fuel range of his base. He was not planning a mission. He was planning an escape. The morning of September 6, 1976 began like any other training exercise. Belenko and his squadron took off from Chuguyevka in the gray Siberian dawn, Cold air, jet fuel smell, the roar of Tumansky engines. Before takeoff, Belenko had done one thing his wingman hadn't noticed. He had topped off his fuel tank completely, every last drop. Once the formation reached the patrol area, Belenko made his move. He broke left, immediately pushed the nose down, and dived. Not toward the ground, toward the water. 100 feet above the Sea of Japan. At those speeds, one mistake ends everything. A slight miscalculation, and the Foxbat becomes a crater on the ocean surface. But at that altitude, Soviet ground radar cannot see him. His wingmen cannot find him. The entire Soviet air defense network is searching above him. He is invisible. For 40 minutes, Belenko flew by memory. No radio, no navigation assistance, no one to guide him. Just the maps he had memorized in his barracks over months of planning. As the Japanese coast appeared through the haze, Belenko faced a problem. If he approached without being identified, the Japanese Air Force might shoot him down. He climbed briefly to 20,000 feet, long enough to trigger Japanese radar. 2 F-4 Phantom interceptors scrambled immediately. Then Belenko dove back into the clouds. The Phantoms lost him. His fuel gauge was now in the red. His intended destination, Chitos Air Base, was socked in by clouds. He could not find it. Through a break in the overcast, he spotted a runway. Civilian, short, Hakodate Airport. It would have to do. The landing was controlled chaos. The runway was 6,500 feet long. The MiG-25 needed twice that to stop safely. During final approach, a Boeing 727 was taking off directly in his path. Belenko pulled up, barely cleared it, came back down hard. Deployed both drag chutes, stood on the brakes until the nose wheel tire disintegrated. The Foxbat overshot the runway by 800 feet, plowed through 2 antenna towers, and came to a stop in a muddy field. Belenko climbed out of the cockpit, pulled out his service pistol, fired 2 warning shots into the air to keep the onlookers back, and said 4 words to the first Japanese official who reached him. "I want to defect." Within hours, the Soviet Union knew what had happened. Within 24 hours, 20 Soviet warships were moving toward Japan. The Kremlin demanded the immediate return of the aircraft and the pilot. They called it an accident. They said Belenko had run out of fuel and landed by mistake. They claimed he had been drugged by Japanese intelligence. No one believed them. If you are still here, you already know this story gets better. Because what happened next did not just embarrass the Soviet military. It destroyed the myth they had spent a decade building. Don't forget to subscribe. Japan had a problem. 20 Soviet warships in the Sea of Japan, American intelligence demanding access to the aircraft, and a Soviet pilot asking for asylum on Japanese sovereign territory. The Japanese solution was elegant. They told the Soviets the landing gear was too damaged to fly the aircraft home. It would have to be disassembled for return. The Soviets had no choice but to agree. At Hayakuri Air Base, American and Japanese engineers descended on the Foxbat. For a month, they took it apart, piece by piece, rivet by rivet. What they found changed the Cold War forever. The first shock came from the airframe. For years, Western intelligence had assumed the MiG-25 was built from advanced titanium alloys, something exotic, something that explained its impossible speed. The engineers cut into the wing. It was steel, hand-welded nickel steel, the same material used in bridges and ships. 80% of the airframe, steel. The massive wings that had convinced the Pentagon the Foxbat was a supreme dogfighter, they were large because they had to be. The aircraft was so heavy it needed enormous lift just to fly. It could not turn at all. Then came the radar. The engineers expected solid-state electronics, integrated circuits, the cutting edge of 1970s technology. Instead, they found vacuum tubes, technology from the 1940s. The CIA eventually concluded this was deliberate. Vacuum tubes survive nuclear electromagnetic pulses. The MiG-25 was designed to keep flying after a nuclear war had started. Smart, but not what the West had feared. And then the engines. The Tumansky R-15 could push the aircraft to Mach 3.2. In theory. In practice, flying at Mach 3 caused the engines to literally melt. They destroyed themselves at full power. The Soviet operational limit was Mach 2.8, and at that speed, the aircraft pulled so few Gs that any Western fighter could outturn it in seconds. The most feared aircraft in the world could not fight back. The realization hit the Pentagon like a thunderbolt. The F-15 Eagle, designed to match the Foxbat, was not just its equal. It was vastly superior in every combat scenario that actually mattered. America had spent billions building a fighter to defeat a ghost, and the ghost had just evaporated. Belenko's debriefings made it worse for Moscow. He told the CIA that Soviet pilots were essentially remote-controlled by ground operators. No independent decision-making. No initiative allowed. The ground controller told them when to turn, when to fire, when to disengage. He told them about the maintenance crews drinking the brake fluid, about the mechanical failures it caused, about the alcoholism, the low morale, the chronic neglect. One CIA analyst later summarized the Belenko debriefings in 4 words: reassuringly dreary ineptitude. After a month of study, the Japanese returned the MiG-25 to the Soviets. Not intact, not on its own wheels. In 40 wooden crates. The Japanese had installed plexiglass windows in the sides of each crate, so the Soviet technicians could see the remains of their prize aircraft as it was loaded onto a cargo ship. Piece by piece. In pieces. Then Japan sent the Soviet Union an invoice, $40,000, for the cost of crating the aircraft and repairing the runway. The Soviets responded with a counterclaim for $10 million for vandalism. Neither side ever paid. 20 parts never made it back into those crates, including the most sensitive reconnaissance equipment on the aircraft. The Soviets filed a formal complaint. The Americans said nothing. They kept the parts. Viktor Belenko arrived in the United States under a new identity. Victor Schmidt, given a CIA safe house, a trust fund, and a new life. His first trip to an American supermarket is now Cold War legend. He walked the aisles for an hour, checking shelves for hidden cameras, looking for signs it was staged, convinced the CIA had filled the store just for him. It hadn't. It was a Tuesday afternoon in Virginia. This was just America. Belenko bought a can he thought was gourmet pâté. The label had a picture of a cat. He cooked it with potatoes and onions. It was delicious. When he found out it was cat food, he sat quietly for a long moment. Then said, "If America feeds its cats better than the Soviet Union feeds its pilots, the Soviet Union has already lost." In 1980, an act of Congress signed by President Jimmy Carter made Viktor Belenko an American citizen. He married a woman from North Dakota, had 2 children, worked as a consultant for American aerospace companies for decades. He never went back. The Soviet Union spent the next decade trying to fix what Belenko had broken. They overhauled the entire air defense network. changed every IFF code he had compromised, rebuilt bases, improved pilot housing, spent billions updating their air fleet. They even added a new feature to their aircraft, a switch that would allow a wingman to shoot down a defecting pilot. They called it the Belenko switch. The F-15 Eagle, built to fight a ghost, went on to become the most successful combat aircraft in history. It has never lost an air-to-air engagement. Not once. In 104 confirmed aerial kills, 104, 0 losses. The Cold War is often measured in missiles and megatons, in satellites and submarines. But sometimes it turned on something smaller. A pilot who had seen enough. A runway that was too short. A pistol fired into the gray Japanese sky. And 40 wooden crates sent back across the Sea of Japan, with plexiglass windows. So the Soviets could see exactly what America had done to their pride, piece by piece. If this story stayed with you, there are more where this came from. Every week, Cold War Confidential brings you the declassified stories of how America outthought, outbuilt, and outflew the Soviet Union, one secret at a time. Subscribe so you don't miss the next one. And if this episode earned it, leave a like. These stories deserve to be remembered.